Okay, I wasn't gonna make this video, but goddamn, the new Death Note is absolutely fucking terrible. This is gonna contain spoilers for the entire movie and then the first half of the anime, let's say. I won't spoil the entire thing. Okay, so the main defense behind Death Note 2017 is that people are saying it's a really bad adaptation, but you know, if you look at it on its own as a standalone movie, it's alright. It's average. It's average. It's not. It's fucking awful. If you want to say it's average, then that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. But, in my humble opinion, it is fucking garbage. And let's talk about why. Let's talk about just the overall look and feel of the movie first, and then we're going to go into the characters, and then overall the actual plot. So, the look of the movie is not bad. People are saying, oh, it's beautifully shot. It's got a few good shots here and there. Other than that, the direction isn't too interesting. Most of it comes down to tilt shots everywhere. There's so many. If you want to play a drinking game with the new Death Note film, then try taking a shot every time you see a tilt shot. That being, you know, it's like a shot, but then the camera's tilted, it's like to the left or the right. And you'll probably die within about the first 10 minutes. There's just so many camera shots that you'd think would be normal and just kind of straight on, but then they're unnecessarily tilted just because it's like it's supposed to be the style, but it doesn't add anything to it. I don't know, maybe it's trying to be even more edgy than the characters and plot itself already is. It really doesn't add anything. It's distracting if anything, and then especially it becomes actually really funny when the camera's moving and then it starts tilting because it's like really in your face, like whoa, and I really want to throw up right now because I was drinking at the same time, because that's the only way you can get through this. I saw this with Guy and Niall, two of my best friends, and we drank, and we didn't play a drinking game. Would have been good, but we hadn't seen it beforehand, so we didn't really know exactly how to make one anyway. Of course, we'd all seen the anime, big fans of the anime, and we just wanted to sit down and have a good laugh at it, and we did. There was a roller coaster of emotions. There was laughter, there was anger, there was sadness, there was disappointment. But that's really not because of the way the film wanted to make us feel. That's not how that worked. It was more the opposite of every time the film wanted to make us feel. And the most confusing thing about it was that sometimes you really don't know if it's supposed to be more comedic or not. Like, is it supposed to be funny, or are we supposed to take certain things seriously? Take his first encounter with Ryuk, for example. That's the thing that's getting shown around a lot, because not only does it best sum up how they have completely destroyed the character of Light, it's fucking hilarious. He sees Ryuk, giant scary demon, I know, but he screams like a little bitch. It's so high pitched, and then he runs away and he screams some more, and it's great if you have the subtitles on. It goes like screaming, more screaming, shrieking, wailing, I think was like the last bit, or whimpering. It's so funny. And I'm just so confused, as like, are we supposed to be like there with him, like, oh god, yeah, this is really scary? But just some of the reaction shots, like when he runs over to, I'll probably freeze frame in the video, when he runs over to the door and then turns back and screams again. It's just such a comedic shot. I'm just thinking about it. I don't even have it up right now, but just thinking about it, it's shot like a comedy, which is in such contrast to, you know, everything else. And then the other thing that makes me think, like, how there's actually two more things. One is the music choice, which is very odd 80s soft rock. It's supposed to be kind of contrasting because it's talking about love and all of this stuff, but actually it's, you know, showing betrayal and all that at the end, and, you know, it's Death Note, so it's not super cheerful. So I guess it's supposed to be funny because it's contrasting, or are we supposed to take that seriously? Like, oh wow, what an ingenious contrast of visual and audio, because it's not. It's really fucking terrible. The music's awful, and doesn't fit with it at all. And then you've got the credits, which show a lot of behind the scenes and kind of the actors goofing about and stuff, being like, look at all the effort we put into this. And that's cool. I have no doubt that effort was put into this. It feels like either they're trying to prove that there was in fact effort put into it, but usually with serious films they don't do that, because it takes you right out of the world that they created and basically everything of the film, because then suddenly after seeing all the the actual characters instead of the actors, now you're seeing the actors, you're seeing the green screen, you're seeing all this stuff that removes the veil essentially. And it's very confusing that they do that at the very end if it wasn't supposed to be like tongue-in-cheek to begin with. Anyway, so those are just some of the problems kind of tonally, directing-wise, camera-wise. Now let's get into the characters. First up, of course, is Light. And like I just said, he's a little bitch. He's not ruthless, he's pretty poorly acted, or the directing was just that bad. I mean, I didn't expect much from the guy who got his start with the Naked Brothers band. He's really edgy, he's got a bad family dynamic, and he's very predictable. Those are the notes that I've got here. There's a lot more than that though. I don't want to go too much into the family dynamic until we get to the dad and the overall story, and same with the predictability. But he's a little bitch, as shown in the very first part, and in contrast with, and yes, I'm going to be comparing it to the anime, because as much as it seems to want to be treated on its own merits, you call yourself Death Note, you fucking asked for it. Okay, so this Light Turner, as opposed to Light Yagami, that's fine. Just to make it clear, I've got no problem with the fact that some characters are white or black. It's in America, it's not in Japan. Makes sense, right? To me, that's fine. I don't see it as whitewashing, I see it as an American adaptation that doesn't take place in Japan. They've already got Japanese live action films. Anyway, this Light thinks with his dick, not with his head. He's nowhere near as smart as the one in the anime, he's far less interesting because of that, and he's more kind of relatable, I guess. He's supposed to be relatable, because he's using this Death Note, which is an incredibly powerful book. Like, the day after he uses it and realizes, wow, this is what a power to have, he brings it back into school, so he's nowhere near as secretive as he is in the anime. Brings it back into school, just kind of reading it there out in the open, because that's not suspicious in any way. So he's doing that. Mia, she's Mia in this. She's so, another one who's so incredibly different from my character, we'll get to her in a bit. Comes over, and immediately he's like, Death Note, yeah, you want to see? I'll show you something cool. And then after failing to show her Ryuk, because that rule's been changed and she can't see Ryuk, because haha, isn't it really funny that I can see him and talk to him and you're all confused because you don't know he's there? I guess that was the goal. But then he just shows her the power of it and has a guy run over. And yeah, he does that to impress a girl. Yeah, it's not smart, because it's not like it's a girl who he's known long, it's just clearly one that he has a crush on. He doesn't know if he can trust her, and later it's revealed that of course you can't fucking trust her. In the anime you would have been able to, because Misa was super loyal to Light, and she was actually valuable to him as a pawn because of her own Death Note and her own Shinigami. And she just has both of those elements stripped from her, and instead of having that, she gets half of Light's character. So let's move on to talking about her, because they're very intertwined, because she is basically half of the original Light. She is the ruthlessness of Light Yagami that Light Turner doesn't seem to have. She also makes the movie into some young adult trash by having this awkward romance story going on that is just really cringy more than anything. It's not really well acted. I don't feel that there's any actual chemistry between them. It's also really hilarious and at the same time vomit inducing, with the whole let's make out on the bed and like, what about this guy, do you want to kill this guy? And I guess she gets off to that, which brings up another point of why was Light so sure that she'd be so turned on to him being able to kill somebody like that. I get that it was a bad guy, but a lot of normal people would still have been like, whoa dude, you just killed the motherfucker. But no, not her. She loves it. So of course you see how ruthless she is by her endorsing what he's doing far more so than he himself is, which is just showing how he's nowhere near as determined in this as he is in the anime. He doesn't have the same ambition that he does in the anime. She's the one that kind of has to push him, along with Ryuk. which, you know, takes a lot of ownership and interestingness from Light himself. It puts it into other characters, and I guess is supposed to also make it so that he's less guilty by the eyes of the audience, you know, because it's like, oh, but he's getting pushed by other people, so we can sympathize with him a bit more, until the end where it turns out you can't, I guess. Anyway, so it's also exemplified in the fact that she wants to kill his dad because his dad is clearly getting in the way, and they know that if they don't kill his dad, then it's obvious that he's incredibly suspicious. And she wants to do it, he's not having any of it. In the anime, Light kind of has a conflict, you know, within himself about should he or shouldn't he kill his father. And I'm sure like another family member at one point, I can't remember the anime incredibly vividly, the entire thing, but I'm sure there's something to do with his sister at one point, maybe finding out. But he's got that conflict, but for the most part, he's all about, no, this is for the greater good, this is for Kira, I need to live, the god Kira needs to live, because he's got a god complex, which he doesn't seem to have here. He seems to have some smarts at the end, and that's about it. Other than that, he's just enjoying killing people and getting off with Mia. Cool. I think this would have been neat if they went all the way with Mia. They went all the way and made her basically Light by the end. That when she betrayed him, she actually betrayed him. That he wasn't able to betray her back, which of course he ends up doing. If you've not seen it, then she betrays him and he's like almost gonna die, and then it's a very confusing mess filled with really dumb rules that I believe are all kind of new. I'm not sure if they're all new. Either way, it's very convoluted. And then it turns out it was his plan the whole time or whatever, and he betrays her and kills her. So, you know, she's gone already in the story. Cool. Which is, I guess, the worst thing he does from the audience's perspective in the entire film. But why does he seem so concerned and want to... Okay, no, we'll leave... Never mind. We'll leave it. We'll leave that for the story thing at the end. But my point is that if they went all the way and just didn't have him betray her, and had her basically become Light, basically saying, this is definitely our own version, now she's Kira, then that would be such a drastic change that I could kind of admire it. There's so many other drastic changes that just don't work, but having the one who's clearly more ruthless, pretty dumb in parts, sure, but also smart enough to know, hey, this guy's gotta die, otherwise we'll be found out. Having her become Kira? Sure, why not? I think that would make for a much more interesting second film, and I would have enjoyed the cliffhanger a lot more. And the thing is, there's so many problems with this film that just talking about each character, I'm probably not going to be able to think, because this isn't fully scripted, I've just got notes, of every single problem that I had with them. Just trust me, there's a lot. But now let's move on to L, the one with, in my opinion, some of the least problems. He did a fucking good job, probably the best acting in the film. Willem Dafoe was good as well, but he wasn't really in it enough to justify it. I really like the actor for L. I've known from Get Out and Atlanta, which is that fantastic series by Donald Glover. And while yes, he becomes a little overly emotional, it's not like L had no emotion whatsoever in the original show to begin with. He did have some. Nowhere near as much as is depicted here, but he did have some, and I can't blame the actor for showing that, because he was clearly directed to act in that way. He's also one of the characters that is most intact from the anime. He has his little quirks of like eating sugar and sugar cubes and all of this stuff, and the kind of strange way in which he talks, and his mannerisms and all of that, like the weird way in which he sits down but he doesn't really sit down. It's quite well done, honestly, and it's just weird how faithful he is in comparison to someone like Light. It's as though the director thought, oh, L is the core of the story, so he needs to be intact, but we can fuck up Light as much as possible, which is complete bullshit, because in my opinion, Light is one of the best protagonists from any anime, maybe even any show. He's just so fascinating, and his character is so unique and thoroughly detestable by the end, yet you still kind of want to root for him. That's one of my things with Death Note, is that I really love both Light and L. And when either of them gets the upper hand on the other, no matter who it is, I always find that satisfying, because I'm kind of rooting for both of them because they're both so goddamn smart. Yet in this they're not. L is quite smart, but because it's a film, he makes some huge logic leaps, which we'll get into in a bit, and instead of having his whole percentages, you know, like I think there's a 70% chance that you're Kira, it's always like 100% you are that person or you're not. This is the case or this isn't, and that's just kind of the perfect embodiment. This is a film. We gotta keep that fucking pace up. There's no time for chances and percentages in this because we have a film to make, which is why I was so confused when it was originally announced to be a film and not a mini-series. Why not just a Netflix series like all of these others? And it's clearly one of the main things that has hampered it. But I still think it could have been good, but it isn't. It's not because it's not simply because it's a film. It could have been a good film, and even all the stuff that I'm covering here in this video is pretty much just scratching the surface of it. More so than just going overly emotional, he also uses a fucking gun at one point. He has this chase sequence, trying to chase down Light, and he even says it in the movie that he doesn't do check, he does checkmate. Checkmate to me and to L in the anime, I'm pretty sure, is catching them out so that there's no escape, so that Light has no alibi and is 100% confirmed to be Kira. There's no denying it, right? Yet in this, he doesn't do that. He gets impulsive, he gets annoyed and angry and sad because of the death of Watari, and sure, I guess, like I can understand why. Watari is a pretty good character actually. Let's just jump into him a quick second. He's kind of just there to give the backstory for L and act as a father figure to L, and then motivation for the whole chase sequence, which is just American bullshit. Of course it is. It's very westernized, and they seem to think that this is how you create tension, when the entire point of Death Note, and one of the best things about it, is that just from two people walking down a street and chatting, it can create tension from just that. Just from a couple people talking. They don't even have to be in the same room, and they can be doing most of the talking in their heads, yet it's still some of the most tense TV that you'll ever see. And that's what's so great about it. Yet in this, they seem to forget all that. They don't have good enough writing, so I guess to make up for that, they just use typical American action chase sequences, and that just doesn't work nearly as well, and is not what I think of when I think of Death Note. Then let's go into Ryuk really quickly. Good job, Willem Dafoe. Perfectly cast, of course. He did the best with what he was given. Decent CGI, just like the Ferris wheel section at the end. You know, the CG in this was actually alright. It was pretty damn good, especially for a Netflix original. The budget was clearly there. It's just a shame that it was spent seemingly in the wrong places. But in this, Ryuk, as we mentioned before, pushes Light a little more into using the Death Note. He's like, go on, do it, like this is how it's used and all that, removing some of the blame from him. He kind of has a more active role, yet he's not even in it enough to justify this more active role, unlike the anime in which he's more of a spectator. And even when he's a spectator, he still has some kind of impact, like in episode 7, where he's laughing at the girl giving Light the false name. That's the hint that Light needs at that point, but it's not direct. It's just Ryuk being Ryuk and just watching and laughing as if he was watching a TV show, just like we all are. And that's genius. That's fantastic. It's such a good way of presenting something and of putting us in the shoes of a fucking 8-foot tall demon looking motherfucker. Of course, they've changed some of the rules because, you know, why not? Beyond the whole touching the book and seeing Ryuk, he mentions the last owner of the note and finding it a new owner. So even though the Shinigami are supposed to be the actual owners, in this, apparently it's just chosen humans. Because just like all other American and westernized shows, you've got to have the chosen one. It can't just be, oh, they happened upon it, and it was just kind of a coincidence. It's like, no, I chose you because you're special or something. And that's really, really quite sad. Because you know why Light got the Death Note in the anime? It's because he was looking out a fucking window, because he was bored with class, because he was so much smarter than everybody else. He didn't need to pay attention, so he was just kind of daydreaming, looking out of the window. That tied in and told you about his character while having that be the reason that he saw the Death Note. That's fucking great. Doesn't happen in this, of course not. You have this perfect way of doing things, and you just ignore it seemingly, just for the sake of being different, and that's one of my problems with this. The dad, I guess, is the last main one we've got to talk about, him and the general family dynamic. The dad's kind of dumb for not suspecting his own son, especially after the diatribe his son goes on about how, even as a cop, why aren't you mad about my mum being killed, and you can't, the guy's still out there and all this. Sure, he puts it together in the end, but it's too little too late. It's really bad, and it's just another thing that changes Light and makes him way more boring, but also more suspicious. In the anime, he's not suspicious because he's a straight A student, he's got a great family who loves him, he's got a mother who's alive and a little sister. They all love him because he's wonderful. He's kind of a recluse, he's a bit of a loner, but he manages to put on this facade of still being able to be very sociable, even though most of his emotions are fake and acted. And it's just really sad that they sucked all of that out by taking away his family. You take away the mask that he uses to hide as Kira. He doesn't have that anymore, and it makes him more easily caught. But then of course he isn't caught because, you gotta have a cliffhanger, you gotta have a second one. So going back to the really convoluted bit that I was talking about near the beginning, with the Ferris wheel and all that, it comes so close to Light being ruthless and stuff, and it seems that he's ruthless at the end because he kills Mia, and that's what he reveals. But then the movie just kind of fucks with that by having him scream about Ryuk and no, I take it back, when Kira in the anime would just be like, I win, something like that. You would just let her go, but instead we get a more screaming, crying version of Light, with this slow-mo fall with tears in his eyes and the most stupid look on his face that, along with the god-awful music in the background, is possibly the funniest part of the film, really. And then, of course, he's even crying in his bed when he's telling his father all this. And he's saying, "That would be so simple." Oh dear, it ain't good. Death Note is structured like the almost perfect TV show in the sense that every episode has some sort of little conflict and it all adds to the overall conflict. And it's always these back and forth mind games between Light and L, and then some of these other characters that can kind of get in the way. And you don't have any of that in this film. You just don't. You can't have that because it's not long enough. And then even if it was, it would probably just waste more time with this bullshit romance that nobody cares about because these characters aren't interesting or likable. Light was likable because he was fun to watch be evil. I didn't want to see him have an actual relationship with Misa, but seeing him use her as a pawn was so frustrating because it's wow, you're a giant dick, but also just really fun because it's this is actually genius, and that doesn't happen here at all. No tension. There's barely anything smart until the very end, and because Light never gets close to Kira as a friend like he does in the anime, it becomes a much more typical cat and mouse detective killer story, which is fine because, that's kind of what the anime was like, but that was one of the special things about the anime, is that it didn't go the exact way that you expected because of how close Light got to L, and you don't have any of that. It sticks them as oppositions from the start to the end because Light is so fucking bad at keeping any sort of secrets and not acting suspicious that of course he gets caught really quickly. Of course he's not able to play up to L as though he's actually just a really good and nice guy and actually wants to help catch Kira, because look at him. He's edgy as fuck. He looks like the sort of guy who would be Kira. He doesn't look like Light does in the anime. This perfectly structured life that has so many barriers to keep people like L out. There's nothing of the sort, and there's no challenges for Light until his dad appears on TV. Up until that point, they montage through so much stuff that, in the anime of course, had so many little tiny conflicts of him building up his reputation and having people get in the way of it and constantly suspecting him. That just doesn't happen here. They get followed everywhere, yet they don't seem to care about taking the notebook and talking about it in broad daylight in a high school with tons of people around. They don't care. I think another thing it comes down to is that these two people, Mia and Light, are shitty people, but in an American way, in a very different, less interesting way than the Japanese way that they were depicted in the anime. And you might be okay with that, and the film does appear to be making fun of them, I suppose, with that god-awful music at the end, and maybe I'm supposed to be laughing at that and their misfortune. But the tone and the message of the movie are all over the place to the point that you can never pin it down, and that's not in a fun way. That's just in a confusing, annoying, obnoxious way, much like the two characters we see here. And then finally, the fucking film is the edgiest goddamn thing I've ever seen. The thing that solidifies it for me is when Light runs to his locker, grabs the Death Note, runs away, and you see in the door of his locker is an American Horror Story. Normal people scare me. Yeah. Well, normal people don't scare me, but terrible fucking adaptations certainly do.